Most people, from a metaphysics perspective, from a know thyself perspective, they always want to go to the highest levels. Like, what are the highest things I can do? What is the most maddest thing that I can do spiritually to grow, to get, to transform, you know? So the first thing people will mention, or people will often mention, like Kundalini, they'll mention, magic mushrooms, psychedelics, Visapanas, which are like these 10-day retreats of silence meditation, or a 5-day fast, 5-day water fast. And those things are incredible to experience, especially if you experience it and you actually, can feel and taste that potency. But I've worked with too many people spiritually who kind of run before they can walk, skip the basics in terms of the fundamentals, the foundations of metaphysics and the foundations of spirituality, and what it's about, regardless of how high you go, because obviously the higher you go, the further you can to fall. So the idea instead is to basically stretch, so your feet are always grounded, even as you aim for the sky, or even aim for the stars. And this is crucially important. Like, literally, I work with people that when they lose their ground, trouble happens, chaos happens, you know, like, it's a fine line between genius and madness. It's a fine line between being ridiculously coherent and suffering from psychosis. Like, these are real actual spiritual experiences. Like, for me, I don't feel like there's enough balance in terms of um talking, for example, about the negative sides of meditation, for example, where there are literally people that have went into psychosis because they weren't able to handle and ground and really augment their reality into something that was tangible. Like, I've basically had some of these experiences that I've spoken about, and quite honestly, because obviously, if you're new to this channel, one of the things that I say is that I was fairy first, so I read a lot of books before I really even practiced anything. And whilst I used to call that mental masturbation, and a certain level of procrastination, in hindsight, it also gave me like solid foundations in terms of what to do in certain situations when I reach certain heights. And many, many, many times it was just literally a video I had watched, or a lesson that I had learned, or a book that I had read, or something that allowed me to not lose myself. It's absolutely key. So I'm basically about to take people to the stars with this knowledge. Like, again, the stuff that I've been working on this week has been incredible in terms of the levels of advanced divination I'm about to introduce to people. And I almost feel like it, well, not even that, almost. I know it's my responsibility as a spiritual teacher, or as just a communicator on YouTube, literally, to really always understand that the knowledge that we can say can actually have an impact. Like, I'm not saying these I'm not chasing clout. Clearly, people know this. Like, I'm not saying these things just for the fun of it. So, yeah, there are these magical, incredible levels, but if you don't ground yourself with fundamental basics, you will find yourself in a spin, or chasing your tail, or going down paths that lead to nowhere. And so today we're going to cover what I feel is the most underrated skill in spirituality, in metaphysics, in the spiritual journey, the path to know thyself. And that is discernment. Discernment. I thought most people knew what this word was, but I'll break it down, because all discernment means is decision making. Wise decision making is what I say discernment is. So I'm basically saying that again, in these higher metaphysical teachings, yeah, I am the eternal presence in the infinite now. So again, we say these things, and it's like I actually live that, like I actually do live that as a statement, as an essence. But then for most people, I have to respect and remember that most people are seeing life as finite in chunks and in these moments of time. And when you have these moments of time, you're basically making thousands of decisions per day, whether consciously or subconsciously. And just on the most basic level, like the most basic level, imagine making 20 bad decisions in a row and contrast that to making 20 good decisions in a row. And whatever you think good is, just go with that. Whatever you think bad is, just go with that. I'm just talking about a contrast between somebody that makes one bad decision. Okay, it's not that bad. I'm still close to myself. But obviously, those 20 decisions later, and there's a gap. There's a gap when you look back and you're like, how did I get here? And even today in my reading today, like I'm doing a reading, like so someone, like I said, I've been really busy this week with my calendar and people booking up these readings. And today, so the readings before were magical. I would like literally, I don't know, people should be speaking for themselves, but the readings were on point, let's just say. And these are people, they're telling me this. But today I had someone, and after about 5 minutes, I was like, you don't really need a reading. Based on what this person was saying, I was like, you don't really need a reading. I'm not sure. Like, I get why you've contacted me because they started talking about, oh, can you show me the money in my chart? Can you show me money in my chart? Um, where the money is. Like, how do I create money? Because I need some money, basically. And I'm just going through a chart and I'm like, okay, cool, we'll get up Jupiter. Okay, we'll look at the number 8. Like these are all like I can do it. But like just something was telling me like that the person that I was speaking to could be helped way more than, oh, here's a number 8 in your chart, or here's Jupiter in your chart. And so basically, I spent 80% of the time, and she appreciated it, speaking about business, speaking about the fundamentals of business and the fundamentals that she needs in order to take her business from X to Z already, from A to Z, because she's on a trajectory which is not healthy, let's just say. So this is exactly what I mean. Like I had this statement that I heard the other day, um, which was sometimes in order to get from A to Z, I can't remember, I'm just paraphrasing, but in order to get to A to Z, sometimes you walk on water and sometimes you take the bridge. Sometimes you walk on water and sometimes you take the bridge. And that part of discernment, that discernment is knowing when and which modes to switch to at all times, or, moment from moment, essentially. Choice. So that's what today's live is about. That's what today's video is about. It's gonna go through discernment, critical thinking, reason, what wisdom really is, how to tap into our wisdom, how to cultivate wisdom. So if anyone's new to this channel, I've repeated it multiple times because it's one of my foundational teachings, which is my three jewels. So I say that the three jewels, my holy trinity, in terms of the jewels, is love, power, and wisdom. So this is a channel that basically answers that call to action to know thyself. And so to know thyself, you need love, power, and wisdom. And how I normally explain it is essentially when I'm speaking about wisdom, I'm talking about self proximity because this channel, again, just for anyone that's new, the themes is all is self and self is all is one and one is all is none and one is all, even. So these oneness principles that, most people have heard of, the power of now, like these are all the things that we speak about. And I use divination and synchronicity mainly as my tools to tap into this, to tap into these elements, to go into these areas. So that's basically what today's video is. And so without further ado, oh, and any questions as well. So if anyone's got any questions around whatever I'm saying, just put it in the chat. I do have the chat up. I can see it going. Um, so I will be reading that throughout and answering any questions that I can. But yeah, without further ado, yeah. So this is not really. I'm not really going to be sharing my screen, just to let you lot know. This is just more of a speaking because yeah, there's no real grasp for this. I've built a whole bunch of slides or notes, let's just say. But all right, so essence of discernment. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. So essentially, the essence of discernment is clarity. So resonance with clarity is absolutely key. We make these decisions, and one of the ways in which I like to explain it is resolution. So if you imagine a video game and you imagine the pixelation. So back in the day, if you were playing computer 20, 30 years ago, everything would be blocks in block pixels. Yeah. There would, or what we call bits, like 8 bits. It's like Mega Drive days. I don't know if people know this stuff, but like it'd be Mega Drive days or Super Nintendo's days, like Mario, basically. That was 8 bits. We now have 4K. Yeah. So when we're talking about discernment and what its essence is, one of the essence is resonance through clarity. So your ability to understand and see clearly is going to be absolutely key. So when you so basically these skills kind of go hand in hand. Discernment goes hand in hand with clarity. You can't have one without the other. But you definitely need to train up your skills on clarity. And obviously, we spoke about intuition, we speak about logic as well, managing and balancing both hemispheres of the brain. We'll get into that a bit later, but that's essentially one of the ways in which you tap into your clarity. The next thing is you obviously have to master energy. So there's no clients that I teach where I share with them more than 4 or 5 practices where there wouldn't be something that is energy based. Understanding the subtle energies. What are our subtle bodies? What are our subtle energies? How does our body work? Essentially, everything is energy, everything is vibration. So, the ability for you to distinguish these frequencies and these vibrations is going to obviously allow for you to be clear. So, I need to get a picture which is clear. I need to see them clearly. And in order for me to see them clearly, I need to understand their vibration, or I need to understand the vibration of the time, the vibration of the moment. Essentially, I need to be able to read the room. I need to be able to read the room. And so, one of the best ways with that is obviously developing listening skills, developing skills where you're understanding the perceptions to tap into, which again goes back to frequency and vibration. So, our brains are limited, which is a really great thing. So, we're in the jungle. You wouldn't want to have a fully blown perception. You wouldn't want a fully blown perception in the jungle because you'll be hearing all things. What you want to be able to do is listen to the things that are potentially dangerous. So again, when we're talking about the all, we really need to understand the singularity of it, or the distinctions of the all. So how am I able to discern between these different sounds? Which one sounds like danger? Like we are pre-programmed. This is obviously part of our nature, but I'm saying like again, we shouldn't be looking at these brain these the mechanics of the brain as bad because we're into the universe is mental, and we then disregard the brain as a real bad thing. Like again, this channel is essentially about balance and equanimity. So why was the reason why our spirit developed or evolved something, especially if we're still using it, there must be a use for it. So how can our spirit work with our quote unquote God-given talents? biology. And then the third thing that we want to have is that we always want to come from a place of peace. Yeah, we in the jungle. Concrete jungle, Bob Marley. Yeah, concrete jungle. We're there. So you want to have you want to basically you want to basically emanate from that centered space, from that space of peace. This is why I teach meditation. I bang so hard on meditation. I bang so hard on meditation in terms of how do you center yourself or coming up with a centering technique. So again, if people are new to this video, I always recommend people to think about and and I mean like literally 101 spiritual hygiene, 101 discernment. Find a centering technique, something that can restore your balance immediately or as quick as possible, ideally without any tools. Like, oh, as in the opposite to that would be I need to go on holiday because these people are stressing me out. That would be the opposite to a centering technique that I'm talking about. I'm talking about a breath, essentially. I'm talking about, centering yourself for a breath, for an affirmation. But again, once you get to this place of equanimity, once you get from to this place from peace, there becomes a certain clarity. A certain clarity will emanate from its a certain level of clarity will emanate. And if it doesn't emanate, it just means that it wasn't the time. I.e., so then the next skill you would need to bring in is patience. So again, some of the reasons why our decisions are off is because we force the issue. We focus on power. So we focus on force over power. We force the issue. When you tap into your centered self, you're now emanating from a place of power. When you're emanating from a place of force, that is a game theory winner and loser perspective, a scarcity perspective. When you're emanating from your own power, especially a divine power that is connected to source, there is no scarcity. There is no impatientness because I completely trust in divine timing. If I'm impatient, then there is something that I'm not trusting in the moment. There's something that I'm not trusting within myself. That would be a point of self reflection. So if you do feel like that, it probably isn't a good time to make a if it is on that, it probably isn't a good time to make a decision. So when we're talking about divine timing, we're also saying essentially just because you have the ability to make a decision doesn't mean that you should use it. Again, those with power have the most responsibility. So once you've got the skills of discernment, it's also about when to wield it. And so in the vast cosmos, every being has a unique vibration, a place within the universal harmony. The cosmos calls to each by their essence. Once you tap into that space, once you emanate from that space, discernment becomes easier. Easier. There's other keys as well. Obviously, it's a masterclass level um, on discernment. So yeah, I've skipped that bit already. So discernment starts from being heart centered, essentially. So when we're talking about that inner peace, we're talking about being heart centered. So I've showed it before. I don't really have it today, but I mean, I've spoken about it so many times. Um, in terms of knowing what the difference between self and not self is, what the difference between your true identity and your ego is, or your true nature, I should say. the difference between your true nature and your identity. If you're not able to distinguish that, then you have no clarity on making decisions. People that speak on purpose all the time, or people that speak on people that speak on things, big, basically, essentially, big ideas in the future. I was going to go with somewhere else, but we'll just switch it. Let's keep it more simple. People that speak on big ideas in the future, there could be a potential grasping to that, a potential desire, like a, if I don't get this, a certain level of desperation, essentially, is what I'm talking about. There you go, I found my words finally. There's a certain level of desperation that the ego operates from, because it operates from scarcity, it operates from I need, it operates from a place of I need, and it operates from a place of constriction. So there's a tightening of the heart with the ego, whether it's energetically or physically. There is a tightening that happens because you're clenching too tightly to this desire. And so we need to have an open heart and be courageous from an open heart, from an open space. It's really, really important. Like, again, meditation, honesty, and courage. That courage to essentially be able to test yourself. You have to do it. So just wait there, my daughter's just there. Naraya, no, yeah, use a laptop. All right, cool. Thank you. So yeah, like I said, openness and courage, absolutely needed. Daily lucid dreaming, a technique. So I'm just, again, I'm looking at the chat. Okay, cool. People are speaking about lucid dreaming. Yeah, lucid dreaming would be a signature of your ability to tap into your true self, to basically be in a centered space. So if you listen to someone called Dan Winter and you watch his videos on lucid dreaming, he talks about brain heart coherence. So I've mentioned this before, but essentially, brain heart coherence is the key to discernment. So someone was just speaking about lucid dreaming. And so when you go into a lucid dream stage, they've mapped your brain and they know that essentially you have perfect hit. You can only get into a lucid dream state once you have perfect heart brain coherence. So that lets you know that you have that ability. Now, obviously, that is when you're in your dream, but it's to get to that state in the waking mind, so to speak. Bring heart and mind coherence in alignment in your waking mind, which i.e. is again turning your dreams into reality. So once you've mastered the ability of turning your dreams into reality, you can almost always be centered, or it's a way for you always be centered, essentially. So yeah, that was just a nice synchronicity that we related. So I've got this book. This is a nice book. It's my kind of book. So it's called Pathways to the Soul, 101 Ways to Open Your Heart. Um, I wouldn't say this book was life changing, quite honestly, because I bought it mainly for the correspondences. So everybody knows that I build tables and I build these correspondences. I'm a syncretist essentially. So I just wanted to know what were the 101 ways, because I was building solutions for people. Like I've basically got a tool which has over 600 spiritual methods and techniques. Over 600. And I already built it, but I wanted to buy this book to see if I had missed out on any, basically. So that's why I bought this book. I had most of them in there, but yeah, there were some real interesting ones that I had never had as well. Um, but the reason why I like this book anyway is in the beginning it speaks about the pathways to alignment, because obviously books are called Pathways to the Soul. So essentially, we have this line: all roads lead to home, just like all roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to home, and this is why I'm not so big on purpose, because the purpose should just be to transform spiritually, to just ascend spiritually. In my mind, everybody has a call to action, a call to know thyself. So when I think of universal purposes, it is to return to your true nature, or to emanate from your true nature. Now, how your true nature emanates, that's a whole nother question. And obviously that's why people, come to me for readings, or people come to me for advice and blueprints and maps and these kind of levels of detail that I go to, because they're not so clear on their true nature. And even if they are clear, they're not sure how to tap into it fully, because there is still a lack of clarity with that. It's because their true nature is masked. They can kind of grasp it, they can taste it, they can smell it, but it's not fully realized. That's what I was looking for. It's not fully realized. And so it's more of a dream, and normally a distant dream or a misty dream or a cloudy dream, those dreams that are not clear. And so they can't really tap into their true nature, because they can see the silhouette of it, but that silhouette isn't enough for them to step forward with what? With courage. With what? With power. With even coherence. Like how could you be coherent to something that you don't resonate with? So how could you tap into your true nature if you can't resonate with it? So again, these are all things I've mentioned before. And so as usual, we're building up, we're joining the dots. I feel like my videos always start slow. It's like, okay, cool, here's one dot. Okay, finally I can now start connecting some dots. Yeah, yeah, I hear that. I hear that. Why do you need to be great with people would be my question. I'm reading the chat, Elion. So obviously, I would imagine. So that is a statement of honesty. I appreciate honesty. We want 100% responsibility and what's the word? Acceptance. So I'm into rapid acceptance and rapid responsibility, like rapid acceptance. Whatever the moment is, we just tap into it, like literally. So peace, peace, peace. So I'm into all of that stuff, but essentially, like, why do we feel like I'm saying that the journey is to focus on self, and then allow people to gravitate to you once you resonate from your level of high frequency, or your true self, or your centered self, higher self, whatever. Again, I'm not really into this is not a video where we're going to get technical on particulars in words and pedantic. Yeah, it's however you find your peace. It will be hard for you to find your peace through other people unless you found peace in yourself. I know this is classic 101s, but again, this is one of those 101 videos where I will say the most obvious shit today, because like I said, I want people to be grounded. It's absolutely key for me. So your spirit guide. I've done this video where I break down the four selves: higher self, lower self, past self, future self. Go check it out. It's in the Infinity series. I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of I think it's the second from last or third from last in the Infinity series. But it's a big key theme of mine, which is to just break yourself down into five aspects, which also mirror um the five directions, including center being a direction or a space, the five elements. So we're mirroring off the five. Basically, we're splitting ourselves into five cells. And essentially, it's about understanding that inner voice, or understanding that voice. inside of our head and realizing that we have different personalities within us. For me, we are all disassociated. The illusion of separation is a disassociation from self. And so to return back to oneness, we need to see ourselves as holistic, but we have these gates. So we have these gates, the pathways. So the gates open up the pathways. So in Buddhism, you have something called the Eight Noble. You have something called the Eight Noble Gates. Let me see if I can share my screen. I'll actually share my screen for this. Oh, it's been a while since I've done this. All right, cool. Let me share my screen with this image quickly because yeah, there's only a few images I've got today. In fairness, but yeah, we'll do this one quick. Yeah. So these are the Eight Noble Paths, and just a beautiful Buddhist framework. It's one of the and this is a classic, by the way. So if anyone's never heard of this before, this is one of the foundational teachings in Buddhism. This is like 101 ABC of Buddhism is the Eight Noble Paths. And what it does is I like this one because it breaks it down into areas: the why, the how, and the what. And so discernment is about being righteous. So I've not said that yet, but essentially discernment is about being righteous. This was like a big theme for me, like about 3 to 4 years ago. It was my number one theme. Everyone knows that I speak in themes. So my number one theme about 4 years ago was discernment. Sorry, it was righteousness. And essentially, when I'm saying righteousness, it just means making the right decision attuned to the moment. So righteousness for me, in my own lexicon and my own semantical meanings, or semantics double word, is making the right decision attuned to the moment. And the key word there is attuned. So because I made the right decision, that same right decision today is not necessarily the same right decision tomorrow. So yeah, everyone just look at this. I'm not going to go through it because you could just see it for yourself. But essentially, it's a wonderful um, way. Samadhi is meditation. It's kind of like meditation basically. So the right kind of effort. If you've meditated before and you try too hard, like, oh, I really need to clear my thoughts. Again, this is that grasping, the clutching, the holding on too tightly or not tightly enough. So the right type of effort is the only one I'll explain because that one's a bit. I like the nuance of that. Is about going into this perfect level of tension. There's a certain perfect level of tension that is attuned to the moment in regards to aggressiveness and passiveness, and that is absolutely key for meditation. Absolutely key. It's actually key in all life, essentially. Um, oh yeah, righteousness. I'm now looking at my thing here. Like I said, I did this years ago. So this is based on the 24, it's like 28 principles basically. But these are the seven laws of Ma'at. And one of the laws of Ma'at is righteousness. So these are the seven laws of Ma'at in the inner. These are the seven universal laws on the outer. And these are um I forgot the word. I think from the going to Kwanzaa. There you go. Kwanzaa. And here's the seven Kwanzaa principles. The 7 days of Kwanzaa, essentially. And then obviously you've got the seven colors as well. So it's like a 28. You can map this into a 28 calendar system or 28 moons. So this basically taps into the moon cycle. This taps into the moon rhythm. But essentially, in order to be righteous, you need to understand correspondence. And the Kwanzaa element that that it links to is purpose. So again, this was like probably one of my first ever attempts at building a correspondence table. Now where I've got like hundreds, if not maybe 1,000, I don't know, who knows. But yeah. And the question there as well is, and so the question that goes for it, so these are Adinkra symbols. I can't remember what they mean off of. Oh, yeah. So this Adinkra symbol. So obviously, I then attach the Adinkra symbols to each cipher. And for this one, it's pursuit to answer your divine question within context. Yo, I had it at the time. The horns of a ram. So these here are the horns of a ram. So we've got that Capricornian energy coming through, which obviously is highly linked to purpose and utility. I use essentially would be the mantra of the Capricorn. So yeah, that's mad. That's a bit of a tangent, quite honestly. But sorry, my mind is going to a tangent, which was I didn't even realize that had the Phil Valentine question um built into it from day one. So the Phil Valentine question, like I said, is he says that everyone came down here to answer a question. And I love that. Like I've never heard anyone say that. I've said this in a video before. I've never heard anyone mention that before. Um, that everyone's come down here to answer a question that allows them to tap into the divine, a unique question for them. So instead of like, what is your purpose? It would be like, what is your question? What have you come down here to answer? If if we are the eyes of God, which is a beautiful analogy from many people have used. If God sees through our eyes, He wants us to notice certain particulars. It wants us to notice certain things. It wants us to have a unique perspective. This is the original. The only original sin is to not be original. So, what is that divine question? And the way you answer that divine question is you have to understand context. So you can't understand context unless you can read a room, unless you can read energy. So it's all making sense now. You can't answer that question without the context. Like, what is the situation? What is the time? What is the challenge of the day? Not yesterday. So like, you know, I almost get annoyed because I don't really speak to people, but like there could easily be a thing where some people they are nostalgic with the olden days. It's like, those days were great. I remember back in the day when it was so great. And then now everything has went to shit, basically. This is like a narrative that I've heard many, many times. And what they will then try and do, like whether it's conscious or subconscious, some people are subconscious or conscious with it, but they then try and fix modern day problems with olden day solutions. And what I would say is like you would need to the mindset that would say is optimal is to have an ancient future. Is to have an ancient future mindset where you're bringing the ancient knowledge and the technology, but you're bringing it into the future. You're understanding the cycles of life, the spirals of life, not the circle of life. You're understanding life as a cycle. And so, how can I understand nature as it's speaking to me in this present moment, and then react from there? So understanding the oscillation. Yeah. Essentially understanding the oscillation of life. This is the key to discernment. It's like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you on your spiritual journey? Um, are you in an up phase? Are you in a down phase? Are you in a growth phase? Understanding the cycles, understanding the spirals. When I'm saying that I'm about to Peace, 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 peace. Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful chat, people. Beautiful chat. Just keep it going. Yeah, I mean, I'm reading all the comments, but obviously, I'm trying not to break up too much. But where was I? Oscillation. There you go. Oscillation. Where are we on our spiritual journey? Where are we today? Like, where am I? This will be one of the greatest questions you could ask yourself. Who am I? Where am I? Where am I? Is a question you should ask yourself often. Like, where am I now? Essentially. And go into that silent mode from that space or from that question, essentially. And then see what your answer is. And it should be different each time. It shouldn't be the same answer. It shouldn't be that kind of same mantra that you have to recondition your mind. This is not one of those. This is where you go into your authentic self. You're trying to tap into your authentic aspect of yourself to understand where you are mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally. This is a check-in, basically. This is a health check, or it's a present moment check, even. And just doing that throughout the week, doing it whenever you feel like you need it. Like if you feel a bit lost, that could be a great centering question. Obviously, we were talking earlier about centering techniques. It could be a question: where am I? And that answer should allow you to tap into the present moment to then center yourself. Where am I? Who am I? You might combine it with where am I and who am I? So, all right, cool. So then we've got the modes of discernment. So this is how to make tranquil, be in tranquil decision making. So the first thing, the first step, this is a 5-step process. So the first step is the question. So remember we spoke previously, or for anyone that's new to the channel, quest, the journey is in the question. So each question opens up a journey. The quest I am on is basically how to think of a question. The quest ion. So ion is also a charge. It is also energy. So this question is going to lead you down a road. It's going to lead you down a path. So when we're speaking about these pathways and we're speaking about this Phil Valentine, everyone's come here to answer a divine question. I understand it from a nature of the spiritual journey. We've all come down here to walk a specific, unique spiritual journey and a path. And then we want to understand the disposition. So the disposition is approach the decision with an open heart, free from disordered attachments, focusing on alignment with universal flow. What's my motivation? I love that question. I love that question. So yeah, one of my favorite books is Start with the Why, Simon Sinek. Start with the why. So that motivation is like if you think about yourself as a car, that ignition point would be the motivation. Like, what is going to be that turning point that gets me to move? That's a real great question. Embrace a tranquil state for unbiased evaluation. So this is the consideration. So this is going into the concentration, kind of like the right concentration. So we went from a disposition. Again, think about it, disposition. Where am I? A position, a disposition. So we are singularly. This isn't that kind of conversation where we're talking about, we're all for one and one for all. This is us going into that mode of distinction, going into that mode of perception, that disposition. Where are we? Now we consider on where we are, and then we compare it to where we are not. So, one of the greatest ways, as I've always said, in terms of tapping into your true self, is to tap into the aspects of yourself that you are not. The most ABC thing you could do is write down a list of things that you truly know you are. That is unchanging. That's the key. not aspects of your personality that you hold on to like a habit that is ingrained, but we're talking about, let me just say it, the things that you will take with you when you die that will still be recognizable and have been unchanged since you were birthed into your death. If you have a list of more than 20 things, I imagine you're doing the exercise wrong. That would be my opinion. I imagine if anybody has more than 10 things, I'd have to question. Obviously, I'd have to see it for myself, but I would have to question it. Like, why are there so many? Because what I'm really looking for is that primal nature, that essence. And so you're comparing from a high place, from the pyramid, from a centered space, essentially seeing yourself as a pyramid, the fire in the middle. And then you're looking at these other dispositions. You're looking at these other dispositions. And then the biggest one, or one, I mean, they're all big, really. But the final step, nothing happens without the final step, obviously. And that is the confirmation. Absolutely key. The actual confirmation. So again, the reason why I need to work with people on grounding and this video for me is absolutely crucial. There'll be just some people that I'm like, I'm not even going to these. I'm not even going to speak to you about divination. I'm not speaking to you about a reading. I'm not speaking to you about synchronicity until you watch this video. This is going to be one of those videos where I'm like, let's see if we can walk before we can fly first, basically. Because what I see a lot of people do that are into synchronicity is they don't wait for the confirmation. They're too fast with it. They have a lack of patience. Because of this busyness, because of this whole because they haven't really tapped into their true self, even though they think they have, or maybe they have in part, but there is still residue from the aspect that is the not self because of that, and that can maybe dominate in certain situations. Obviously, there is a rhythm, there's a balance, there's a cadence. Like sometimes it's going to be more of your true self tapping in, sometimes it's going to be more of your ego. Like this is just natural. Like we all go through these cycles, these biorhythms. But that lack of confirmation from however you get your confirmation, like will be one of the keys to your downfall. Like where the whole cards that we've built up until now will will fall flat on its face. Absolutely, patience was my biggest lesson. It's it will be most people's in the West. It will be a lot of people's in the West because obviously we live in such a fast-paced, concrete jungle. That concrete jungle is ridiculously fast-paced. It doesn't really reward patience. And when there's no reward for patience, you're going to see society how it is now, essentially. A lot of it is because everything is quick, quick money, quick love, quick everything, isn't it? Fast food. And so I'll be able to see how much you really tap into your divine timing through how much you show patience. That would be a signature. Like the signs of nature is it's like the perfume. You don't really need to speak it. Like you just have a certain essence. There's a certain essence. There's a certain fragrance around spirituality that makes it quite easy to distinguish if you know the scent, if you have that sense of smell. But I'm talking, metaphors and spirituality. But it's like it's not because you're trying to put people in a box like, oh, only spiritual people can do that. Like clearly I'm not one of these people. Spiritual people can do that, and but there is a certain level of coherence with it though. Definitely. That would be one of the fragrances. That would be one of the fragrances because as usual, I'm like, yeah, create your own reality. But at least make it connect. At least make it be in symphony, not in discord and disarray. So Yeah, that's the 5 steps for thoughtful discernment. Questions for reflective practices. Have you explored your options thoroughly? Are you in a state of tranquility and balance? Is your decision aligned with serving your highest purpose? Have you engaged in reflective practices to gain clarity? Have you involved guidance from trusted sources in your discernment? That's a big one. Could have almost started the intro if I was thinking about the intro because I had a few different intros like throughout the day. And so one of the intros was going to speak on why discernment is so important in today's age. Like again, contextually, I didn't really do the contextually thing. So the contextual reason of why discernment is so important is because we're in the information age. So we have information overload. We have too much information. Where we obviously have fake news. We obviously have a lack of trust in authority. And so each moment brings its benefits and dangers. I'm not saying like, yeah, we should trust authority. Like, who am I? Don't listen to me. Like, discount everything you say. If it doesn't resonate, you gotta do what you want to do. But what it means is that we have to rely on our wisdom way more than ever. Before you would put your trust obviously in one person. We're talking about like the ancient times or back in the day. You would just put your trust in your pastor, your doctor, that one person or that group of people that are quote unquote inherently to be trusted. And now because we don't trust anything, like can't imagine too many people watch the news that follow me that are on this live and are 100% trusting of the news. Like who's 100% even trusting of their doctor anymore. And so we've all become our own source, essentially. And then we've got like clout chasers and people that are dishonest, like dishonesty and like, that chase for fame. See, then you can't even really trust people as well. Like it's hard to then trust people is what I'm trying to say as well. So it's like there's a trust crisis. There would have to be a trust crisis that has come about because of the information age. So again, the information age brought in many great things, but then there is a shadow to everything. And I'm saying that one of the shadows would be that most people feel that it's harder to trust people than it used to be back in the day, especially if you're older. And that isn't really going to improve based on the fact that we're moving into this energy. These are like 2,000 year cycles. So we're just at the beginning of this cycle. So I don't see how. And then obviously in terms of the escalation of information, that's only going one way as well. So the ability to control, the ability to navigate and manage in this space means that discernment is way more important than ever. And I'm almost talking about it from like a psychology perspective. Like I am actually no specifically. This isn't a you basically if you were into psychology, this video will be just as valuable as if you weren't quote unquote spiritual. Because we're talking about again navigating life's labyrinth. Like labyrinth just means maze. I might just change it to maze, but yeah, LL LL Cool J. Yeah, it's a life's labyrinth. It's just a fancy word for maze. is key. So so funny that yeah. So I just went on to my next. I literally just spoke about what my next note was, which is crazy. I like that. So I've got a little framework called Proact. I'm going to share my screen on this one actually. Why not? Just because it's a framework. We like models. All right, cool. Glasses. Mhm. All right, so we've got a couple of models that people can take. All right, so there's a book called Common Errors We Make When Making Decisions, where we make decisions. And there you go. As big as possible. All right, cool. Boom. So yeah, there's something called the RAP method. There you go. So there's something called the RAP method. WRAP. And I like this method because it starts with widening your options. So again, when we're talking about from an open heart space, if we think about it from an energetic perspective, that opening of the heart allows you to tap into more frequencies. So essentially what it does. It allows you to be resonant with more frequencies. The more resonant you are with more frequencies, the more options you have. So it widens your options. So that bird's eye view, what does it do? It widens your options. That step back, it widens your options. That patience, it widens your options. So all of these aspects widen your option. And that's one of the first things that you need to do when you make a decision. That's way before any decision making thing. It's like, okay, cool. I've identified a problem. What are my options? And how can I get more options? How do I know that these options are the right options? Because again, most people that just run before they can walk will just take the options that they have and go from there. Like literally, I've got these 5 options, I've got these 4 options, and I just feel like one of them is right, so I'm just gonna go with one of these 4. And so that's the kind of problems that we run into often. That will be a real common problem. Is just going with our first thoughts without really going into that space of contemplation to widen our options, essentially. And that's why I said in terms of like this conversation probably being one of the most real conversations I'll have in terms of like where this guy hasn't said pineal gland once yet on this video. Look, I just said it there. There you go. He hasn't said kundalini once on this video. Like, what's going on? But it is what it is. So, reality, test your assumptions. Fruits of your labor. Like, I've been saying that quite hard over the past couple of weeks. Like, where is the fruits of your labor? Or where are the fruits of your thoughts? How are you able? So, like, I always say that people should have the mind of a scientist or an alchemist. Adopt the mind of an alchemist, adopt the mind of a scientist on your spiritual journey. It's one of the greatest mindsets to adopt. And essentially, all scientists have the scientific method. And essentially, it's not science if you can't test it. Otherwise, it's just a theory. So you want to be able to test your assumptions before you dive in first. So if you start in a business, again, this is like 101 stuff, but it's like, you start in a business. I've got this great idea. Oh my days. I've got this great idea. I saw these 3 numbers and spoke to my friend and she was like, yeah, that's amazing. Stay in your power. Just manifest that you can. Okay, cool. Slow down. Just slow down. That's great that you've got the what motivation and enthusiasm. So that would be the first thing, that spark. Maybe there was a divine spark in you that was like, yeah, this idea seems amazing. But before we just go and run 100 miles into it, how can we prove this? So in business, there's something called the canvas business model. The canvas business model. I think I'm mixing up the words. But essentially, instead of doing a 40-page business plan that will take you a week to do, we basically build these one-page business plans. Just a one-page business plan that essentially can be done in like half an hour to an hour, depending on how quick you are with these things. And that one-page business plan will allow you to have a bird's eye view on the business. So many people, they have like these business, obviously I do business consultancy as well, or I used to do it like heavily. We just get these ideas, and again, they've not really thought it through that well, because I start asking them what I would call 101 questions, basic questions, and they don't have the answers. They've only focused on, again, one aspect. They've not widened their choice. So they've been so tunnel vision on just, I don't know, the product, that they haven't thought about all of the other elements that it's going to make to be successful, because no one wants to start up as an unsuccessful business. Do you have the business skills to start a business? I'm not sure how many people ask themselves these things. Do you have the business skills to start? No, sorry, apologies. That's a terrible question. Do you have the right business skills to be successful in business? What are the co-indications? What are the indicators that you have the actual skills to be an entrepreneur? Because there's certain fundamentals that 95% of entrepreneurs are made of. There's a certain substance, there's a perfume, there's a fragrance that is exuded from entrepreneurs. And I know they come in many different shapes and sizes, but there are a lot of commonalities. And do you have those things? How can we turn your business idea into a prototype? So there is a rapid prototype, there's rapid prototyping frameworks basically that allow you to test your product within a day, literally within a day, within a minute, really, quite honestly. Like any business idea, I could go test it. What? Why? Because I could walk out my house and could go ask some people about my business idea. Oh, I'm doing a survey on a product that's about to launch. I've got a product. I've done this before, by the way. Like this is stuff that I actually do. I've got this business which is about to launch, and we're just doing a bit of marketing research to fine tune. Think about what I'm saying. To fine tune the message to see if it resonates with people. So if you've got a couple of minutes, I'd love to just ask you a question just to help me out. Boom, there you go. Open the door, and you just have a conversation with someone that doesn't know you. That's the key thing. They don't know you. Just pick them up off the street. They're impatient. Hopefully, they've got things to do as well. So they're just going to give you an answer. Hopefully, that's an honest one. Yeah, you never thought you were getting a business lesson today, did you? Attain distance before deciding. That's incredible. Attain distance before deciding. You know, sleep on it. Sleep on it. As someone who is a creator and who has a creative mind, definitely one of the biggest things I've learned is to sit on my ideas. So even though I move at, you know, with what could be considered fast, I probably have, even right now, I probably have 80 ideas I'm sitting on. And when I mean sitting on it, I mean I don't even really think about them, but they're there. Like I'm an opportunist. So there may be a time when I jump on some of these ideas or jump on one of the ideas, but I'm not in a rush. Like I'm already a busy person. I've already got, I'm already purposeful in my life. My life is very righteous, as in, you know, attuned to the moment. But I have these ideas that percolate in the background. Sometimes I even do a bit of research on them just because I have time or what for whatever reason. But there's a massive distance. Again, I'm not really operating from a place of lack. So there's no rush. I can, wait and then preparing to be wrong. Like The reason why the scientist mindset, I believe, is one of the most healthy is because the cleanliness with them not caring about whether they're right or wrong. They just want to know the truth. So I'm not fussed if I'm right or wrong. I'm essentially just experimenting. For me, life is art. So there isn't, I won't say there's no right or wrong, but essentially I'm not getting boosted whether I'm right. I'm not trying to prove whether I'm right, basically. I'm not trying to prove whether I'm right. That may happen, it may not happen. I've failed more times than I've been successful. So we're not trying to cling on to righteousness. It could be wrongness. Wrongness is a thing, it's a thing. Rapid acceptance is more the key. All right, so that's the RAP framework. So widen your options, reality, test your assumptions, attain, distance before deciding, and P, prepare to grow. Yep, painting the picture. So we've got another framework. I'll run through this one a bit quicker because I read it before. It's quite similar to rap. There's just more aspects to it. So problem, object, objective, alternatives, consequences, trade-offs. That's a big one. I'll stop there because I've not really mentioned it. But opportunity cost essentially. So when you're doing these comparisons, we obviously have these comparisons, but in business there's a term called opportunity costs. And opportunity cost essentially is the consequence, what it's going to cost you in order to not do that thing. Sorry, in order to do that thing. So if I had to do this, so if I make a choice and I go down this path, it means I can't go down that path. So this is actually about understanding the linearity of your decision making. Like, again, I've literally spent 8 hours speaking about the Infinite series, but I'm then doing this conversation to balance that out with, left and right side of the brain essentially. Is that so? When I'm talking about the Infinite series, I'm just basically talking about tapping in from this, working from a centered space. That doesn't mean that you don't work with time. There's many ways to work with time. And so when we're talking about the opportunity cost, we're obviously talking about linear time. Like, you've went down this path, you can't relive the past essentially. So once I make this decision, we are now in the moment of that decision, the momentum of that decision. And so before you make those decisions, as you're understanding the consequences, you're understanding what the trade-off is. And so there's something called a cost benefit analysis. So these are like business terms. This discernment conversation is getting real businessy because, like, obviously I'm into that stuff as well, but with no buts. But a cost benefit analysis is essentially you weighing up the positives, the negatives, and then looking specifically at trade-offs. Honesty here is absolutely crucial. Honesty here is absolutely crucial, which is clarify your uncertainties. Again, rapid honesty, rapid acceptance to the moment. What is there that I'm not understanding? What is it that I don't know? And write them down. Me not knowing these things, how much of a risk is that to the business? Because I don't have these competencies or because I don't have these skills. Again, these are the things that you don't have. It's about you recognize what you have, similar to like what we know and we don't know. We're talking about that from a spiritual perspective. On this quest to know thyself, what is it that I know? What is it that I don't know? On this quest to discernment, what is it that I know or what is it that I'm uncertain about? And that should be real, real clear, like where your imperfections are. And so sometimes we get into these states in spirituality where I get where people are coming from with this whole toxic, what's it called, toxic positivity or something like that. But which I don't really watch it, but I get it. I kind of get the phrase. Um, but essentially, it will just be about not being authentic. So where there is faults, where is there uncertainty, it should just be on the table, and then you should be trying to see. You should be coming up with a risk assessment. You should be coming up with a uncertainty assessment, which is weighted to and prioritized to the biggest things that you need to know, where you need to close the gap. And so then we do something, and then we will do something called a gap analysis. I swear this is literally just turning into a business. I'm hearing myself speak, and I'm like, this is literally business. Because what is business is about making good choices. The most successful companies make the most great choices. It's essentially at the end of the day. They have, there's other variables involved. But if everything goes on equal footing, if someone comes in with this amount of money, someone comes in with this amount of money, the only other distinguishing element, which would be the major deciding factor, would be the decisions that company or those people made as a group or collect or individually. That risk tolerance. Like I said, working with me is not easy. Like I try to, I almost like don't sell to people. Like I said, I've got a real high sales ratio because I'm a salesperson, but it ain't really that. It's because I listen to people speak and I'm like, you're not really ready for where I would want to take you. And I'll question that, and I'll question that to them as well because I don't mess about with this stuff when it comes to like transformation and going to these levels, going reaching the stars. I don't really play. So if I don't believe that you've got the ability to do that, then I just won't work with you. It's just that simple because I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my. I wouldn't say would waste my time because you pay me money, but I actually want success stories. That's basically. I just want success stories. So I prefer to have five clients than have a. I prefer to have 5 out of 5 clients that succeed than to have 15 clients. Sorry, than to have 15, than to have 20 clients and only 10 of them succeed. I prefer to just have 5 clients. And so your risk tolerance, like, are you willing to sacrifice what it needs? Are you willing to sacrifice what is needed in order to move forward with courage to make this decision that is going to lead you down a specific path? You know, the reason why it took me so long to like get up on, for example, social media is because I was like, I'm not going to start social media unless I'm going to do it for 5 years. I'm not even going to do it. Well, after, yeah, I didn't really need to test it and experiment it, but yeah, essentially, I made up my mind, and I was like, I'm not going to do social media after an initial test phase because obviously I've been testing. I do say that that's why I'm so inconsistent. But like once I'm like, okay, cool, we're gonna go with this. I'm not gonna bother unless I'm gonna put skin in the game for 5 years. I might not be here for 5 years, but intention set 5 years. So am I willing to sacrifice the amount of effort that it puts into these videos, into everything else that goes with it? Because if I'm not, then I'm not gonna start because that's how long it takes to be successful on YouTube for most people. Those that 1% of people, sorry, that 0.1% of people that blow up out of the millions of videos that are quote unquote overnight successes. I'm not gonna bank on myself being a 0.1 percenter in a YouTube space where I have no experience. Again, if I was just like on some manifestation thing, was like, oh, I'm gonna blow up amazingly big, I would say to myself, where is my evidence for that? You know, where's my evidence? Where are you getting your confidence from? trying to avoid delusion with this stuff. Like there is a it's such a fine line. Like I said, it's such a fine line between tapping into your magic and being delusional. It's such a fine line. And again, this is where the righteousness just comes into play because you can make the same type of decision for one thing and magic happens, but then for the other thing, you apply that same logic, that same magic, forget logic, you apply that same magic and it doesn't work for that thing. And it goes back to how I started my intro. You need the first part of discernment is knowing when to take a bridge and knowing when to walk on water. Full circle. Linked decisions. We just spoke about full circle. Linked decisions. Consider linked decisions. So essentially, that's just talking about the chain of your events. So you need to be able to visualize the chain of events that will happen from this one decision. So you're running scenarios. So this can be seen as a real spiritual thing. So when you understand this place of silence, when you understand the heart-centered space, and then you link it to like, okay, so what is so magical about our heart? The thing that you would relate it to is the quantum world or this negative space, like, whichever terms we're using. But that kind of reality, essentially, you have quantum computers. I won't get too technical, but just the difference between a quantum computer and a linear computer is that a normal computer can only make one decision at a time. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. And that would be part of their logic tree or a decision tree. And then whatever the output is at the end of that, based on what the question is. So you obviously would have a question at the start, or you would have an input at the start, and then you have an output. And in order to get to this output, there is, decisions: a yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Okay, cool, boom, output. A quantum computer has the ability to make multiple decisions at one time, to see all possibilities at one time comes through as a feeling. So if you were tapping into your quantum space, you wouldn't be able to put it into words because things would process so fast. It would just come out as a feeling. And that essentially is part of your intuition. As I've always said, in order to build your intuition, you have to have you have to widen your options. Intuition can only operate from a space of its options. If it has never heard of anything or there wasn't anything in its frame of reference, it wouldn't be able to. Oh, yeah, hit the like button as well. I forgot about that. We'll get there one day, people. We'll get there one day. But yeah, hit the like button if you haven't already. Yeah. So anyway, it really does help. That's what they say. So, um, yeah, widening your options. So again, for me, when we're talking about walking on water and taking a bridge, most people will attempt to walk on water too many times by tapping into their intuition, and their intuition doesn't have a wide enough options to be able to intuit from. So I'm saying, how could if something wasn't within your frame of reference, whether even if it went into your subconscious mind, if it went into your frame of reference, how can you pull it out from somewhere? So most people are not tapping into the Akashic records as much as they think. This is my opinion. Just believe what you want to believe. But in my opinion, most people are not tapping into the Akashic records as much as they think. The Akashic records would be where you channeled something that you had never heard anything of before, like it wasn't within your frame of reference. When I'm saying intuition, I'm saying it's sat in the reservoir of your subconscious mind, and you've been able to draw it out from the reservoir of your subconscious mind. But we don't know everything, so we only have, our pool is only so deep. The Akashic records pool is obviously infinite. But I'm saying that most people will use their intuition more than their Akashic records. It may seem like a very similar, because they're going to seem very, very similar in terms of how they're received or how it's communicated to your conscious mind. Hopefully that's making sense. If anyone's got any questions as well on this stuff, like I feel like I'm breaking it down pretty well. Um, and I'm not really using big words, but yeah, if anyone's got any questions on this stuff that I've said so far, yeah, please just put them in the chat. I do have it open. I big up the chat as well. Big up yourself. So, proact, tolerance, done. All right. Ah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. So, discernment is about truth. Forgot to show you like this as well. Let me share my screen again. So again, for anyone that's not seen this, so for anyone that's not seen this, again, this is I've shown this a couple of times now. I'm not going to say any of this stuff because I've spoken about it before, but this essentially is my version of the Kabbalah tree of life, or the my version of the tree of life, from ascending from the self, from creation, all the way up to returning back to source, where you are rewarded with peace. And so I've basically, this is the reason why I'm saying this is one of my last fundamental videos, is because I've basically broken down things into groups. So a couple of weeks ago, we broke things down from the creation, simulation, theory, and oneness. Then we started speaking about meaning and how to, live a meaningful and purposeful life. And we spoke about these three. And so where we are today is speaking on this yellow section. So I probably should have showed this at the start, but it's fine. We are here now. So what I'm basically saying is, obviously the road is to basically tap into the value of truth, know thyself. So below here, we've obviously got this purpose to know thyself. I believe everyone has it, as about as universal as it gets, let's just say. And so in this quest to know thyself, you need to be able to tap into your truth, tap into your true self. It's almost getting like diluted, this term, but it is what it is. So we'll continue to use it. So tapping into your true self, which then becomes your value system. So your value system is tapped into from your true self. How you tap into your true self is through discernment. Well, firstly, through observation and absorption. We've spoke about that already. So we spoke about that observation. You then, what you're observing, once you've observed, you then master the skill. So discernment is a skill, it becomes a skill to tap into the method of wisdom. Wisdom is your method to tap into your truth. So these three jewels, one of the jewels being method, is how, sorry, one of the jewels being wisdom, is how you tap into your truth. It's how you tap into your truth, essentially. So we're kind of stopping here. So basically, I just wanted to show you like that. Um, of like why we're doing this, basically. So discernment allows you to tap into your truth. And let's go to the next one. The reason why I brought that up is because my next point is something I've not mentioned before, which is you're looking if something is truthful, the most close, if something is close to the truth, then it should be able to be applied in many aspects and many areas. So there is something called absolute truths, which means it would apply everywhere universally. Now, I don't really believe in too many absolute truths. There are not many absolute truths, if any, because of this whole thing of perception and quantum time and all of these things I've explained in other videos. You'll need to watch them to go into that. But essentially, I don't believe that there is an absolute truth that is set in stone, especially in this reality, especially in this reality. And so, but what you are trying to do in this quest to get closer to the truth, to know thyself, is you want to go to the most rooted truths possible, the most fundamental of that truth possible. And so the biggest things that you will need to discern, or where your discernment comes into its own importance, where it becomes really important, is around those big truths, those life-changing ones. Like if I get this wrong, I've literally lived life wrong. So if I don't have the right model of how the universe works, if I don't understand how the universe works, if I've got that wrong, then the model is insignificant, because whatever method I employed to get there, well, I was going off in the wrong direction anyway. So it was leading me to separation. It was leading me to a lack of truth. It was leading me into my ego, wherever. And so one of the skills in which we use to counterbalance that is by seeing where else it can work. How universal is this truth? How universal is this principle? So this is specifically talking about fundamental truths. You wouldn't apply this obviously to very niche one-off scenarios. But in those one-off scenarios, it may not even be important anyway. So we're talking about like those big important decisions, like what is the meaning of my life? Who am I? If I don't get these questions wrong, it's going to lead me down the wrong path, potentially. Well, definitely, because I've said it specifically. And so, where else does it work? If we were reflecting on self as part of like on a spiritual journey, if we return this back to the spiritual journey, when I'm talking about the knows and not knows, where am I present with this certain level of integrity, with this certain level of absolutism or essentialness or prime being, which works in all scenarios? Does it work in all scenarios? Or how many scenarios does this part of my character work in? For example. So yeah, looking where else it would work is a big indication that you're getting closer to the truth. And then just flipping it, yeah. So I think we've kind of discussed that kind of stuff before. So yeah, just flipping it. Just let's assume it's not the truth. So this thing that I think is the truth, let's assume it's not for 1 second. And then you just play out that scenario. So you just flip it on its head, essentially, and play out that scenario. So what about if I didn't get this job that I was really desperately desiring, so on and so forth. All right, cool. So that's the notes for how we're doing for time. We're doing well for time. Yeah, so we're not going to be too much longer. I've got a couple more, well, one more thing to show actually. So let me just pull it up. So, what I've also built is, well, not built, but as part of my notes. Let's go to the top of it. There you go. All right, cool. Yeah. So what I built as part of my notes is just the whole process of discernment in a whole bunch of ways, but I'm not going to speak about them a lot because I've been going off tangent and I know I've covered a lot of them before. So I'm just going to go and pick out some points basically from my other notes that I've got. But essentially, this part covers the process of discernment, which we kind of tapped up in with those models, I know. But then also the skill development. So the ways in which you can build up your skills. And I've got a whole bunch of skills. I've got like 17 skills. But again, these are very self-explanatory, so I'll kind of just be reading them off. You can just do your own research. Basically, this is part of the video where if you're interested, you will just do your own research. I'm not going to go into any of these points ridiculously deeply. And then as usual, some exercises. So I'm always trying to do videos where people take things away if they want to actually develop and cultivate certain aspects. Then they've actually got tangible takeaways that they can work on, straight after this call. And then that's how it ends. So let's go to the top. All right. So there might be some moments of silence as I just tune and pick the actual areas that I want to speak about. Um, Clarity of no, 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 no. Just having critical thinking. So obviously I've mentioned critical thinking a couple of times, but I'm going to pull something up on the screen. Um, and I've spoken about this before when I did one of the videos where I was speaking about logic and how to build a system that is coherent. But I'm not even sure if I pulled this up on the screen, so we'll just get so basically what we're going to speak about, what I'm going to just show you is a chart of negative biases or basically what we talk about like cognitive dissonances essentially. So I'm just going to pull up any chart that I feel like is pretty decent. All right, cool. We're going to pull out this chart. I like this one. It looks good already. Now, this basically is absolutely crucial for getting a clear mind. So without this, it would be hard. It will be hard to think clearly. It is quite, if you don't have some of these in mind, it is quite likely that you're going to be operating from ego. Oh, okay, cool. Open image as edit. Why you not give me a clear version for? Okay, cool. Yeah, there you go. All right, cool. Yeah. So these are some cognitive biases. Again, I'm not going to go through. Clearly, I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the fallacies that our brain tricks ourselves into that mean that it's very, very hard to make a clear and clean and good decision because our brains are stuck in thought patterns that are corrosive, essentially. And so the anchoring effect, I'll just read off a first, I'll just read off a few of them. Anchoring effect, relying too much on the initial piece of information offered when making decisions. First test seemed okay, and then you just go straight into it. So basically, you basically have a bias because something worked the first time. It now means that you feel like that has now set a pattern. But in logic, there is something called a statistical significance where you would need enough proofs. That's why, at the very least, three is the magic number. Because if I can repeat something three times, it potentially then doesn't mean it's a coincidence. Maybe there is a pattern of behavior that means that I can repeat this into a framework that will then produce success. This is why when you're setting up a business, it would be really, really important to not speak to people that you know because the people that you know are likely going to tell you yes or say something positive the first time. Belief bias, basing the strength of an argument on the believability and the plausibility of conclusions. I'd say that's one of the biggest things in the spiritual community, quite honestly, that I see inherent. Like I think that is rampant. And like, who am I to say what's true or not true? But there are so many things that can sound plausible if you are clever. The snake oil sells like a snake oil salesman. You can make it seem plausible, doesn't mean it's true. Sure. Blind spot bias. Like these are just so fascinating to read. Like I think people should know at least 15 of these off by heart. And if you don't know them by name, at least you read them and you're aware of them. Like 15, just take your that would be a task that like I'd set my students. The people that are studious, look at the 15 cognitive biases or negative fallacies. There's two, they're very similar, but negative fallacies gives you even a bigger list. Cognitive bias is a subset of a negative fallacy. But essentially, you want to build like at least a top 10 list of the things that you are most prone to. This is an absolutely wonderful exercise that everybody in the world could benefit from. The world would be a much greater place if were aware of our own biases when arguing, speaking our points, making a point, making a decision. Looking through these, like they're all good. Oh, there was a color thing here as well. So I like this chart because there's a color coordination as well. Um, what's a social one? Let's do a social one. Devaluing reactive devaluation, devaluing an idea because it originated from an adversary or opponent. Oh my days. Leave me alone, people. It's a massive one. That's a massive one. I remember when someone said they, and I really do get it, but I don't know because I'm always into the resonant moment. Again, righteousness, being attuned to the moment in the context. You could be a liar 95% of your time. If you speak the truth for that 5%, then I will just accept that as truth. I will now obviously it's hard to like work with someone like that. So I'm not trying to say to work with someone like that, but essentially, I remember someone that this person I believe was speaking quite a lot of wisdom, but because this person didn't like them, they were so dismissive of what they were saying, and that person was actually trying to help them, but they just didn't like them. So again, it's kind of like you've just closed your ears. You're not tapping into the resonant frequency for the moment. Yeah, it's a massive one. It's a massive egoic one, essentially. Like obviously, all of these are aspects of ego, of course. So anyway, like I said, believing the future probabilities look at that gambler's fallacy. Believing future probabilities are altered by past effect. We talk about the probable universe. We talk about a probable universe. Believing future probabilities are altered by past events when in fact they are unchanged. As in that time, the basically that toss of the coin, the previous toss of the coin had no inference, especially if you were going to hold it the same side up. So let's just say you're going to flip it on the heads every single time. So it's not if you picked up from a different place. So what the outcome was in the past has nothing to do with the future. And so people that are unable to break patterns often is because they believe in these moments, this continuation of time from a habitual perspective, which basically speaks into the gambler's fallacy. So yeah, again, like I said, this is one of the greatest things that people could do. Like I couldn't argue more for this. Like over about a millions, over 600 of my spiritual solutions that I have, this one would have to be in the top 10. And again, I'm not even sure if I'd call it spiritual. This is You don't need to be spiritual to do this, but this will further your spirit. No ifs or buts. Hopefully, you get what I'm trying to say. All right. So, yeah, critical thinking. I spoke about that already. We'll speak about that another week. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, post decision evaluation. Obviously, once you've made a decision, just reflecting back on it, how optimized was that decision? Essentially, we're just looking for we're looking for optimal ways of living, optimal ways of being, attuned to the moment, discernment. And so that reflection, obviously, as those reflection points, those contemplation times, real important. So yeah, I had 15 processes, but I essentially spoke about all of them um, in my own way. And then spiritual development through skills. This is the second from last section. We're doing really well for time. Cultivating silence through meditation. Boom, boom, boom. Spoken already. Yes, it speaks. So this one I'll just bring up anyway, but just skills to develop that allow you to discern. But I just want to say the word out loud is emotional intelligence. Emotionally intelligent people make the best decisions. So again, operating from the state of balance, operating from the state of equanimity, operating from the state of peace, operating from the state of intelligence, operating from the state of an emotion at rest is absolutely key. So I've kind of spoke about this already, but yeah, just I wanted to use the word emotional intelligence. I love that actually as a word. It's one of my favorite phrases. Is emotional intelligence. There are many ways of judging intelligence. I'll take emotional intelligence over and over someone scoring high on an IQ test all day, every day. Yeah. So obviously, a deeper part of the energy work is body awareness. So again, when you're tapping into your frequencies, when you're tapping into that soul energy, it basically gives you more reads of the situation. So if you're tapped into your body and you know that like some people have a tell. So if you're playing poker, if you're gambling or you're playing certain sports, some people have a tell before they're about to do a move. So for anyone that's played any card games or poker games, they might like laugh before they lie or something like that, or before they bluff. And so that tell gives you what? It gives you information about how somebody's thinking. So by us tapping into energy work, by us tapping into body awareness, that allows us to read, to get different information that allows us to read the room in different ways. Yeah, I think I've covered the big points in that. Like a lot of the other things are like teaching you to suck eggs, like, you know, so I'm just going through the nuance points at the moment because I think we get the gist of it. What is our support network like? So these are questions you can't force this. So obviously, someone in the chat before was like, I don't really have like my frustration is with my people. Like I don't really have anyone that I can speak to about this stuff. So they kind of focus on themselves, which if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. But essentially, one of the most beautiful things in life is having a support network, having people that you can confide in, having people that you can trust, having people that you can trust that can be a sounding board for your madness. And when I mean madness, I mean just everybody. I believe everybody has a split personality until they've literally returned to oneness. Until they can operate from that center of oneness, then we all have, to a degree, and whatever degree that is, there's extremes or there's levels to that degree, but that degree is the separation from self, seeing all as self and self as all. But until we get to those states, having a sounding board, think about, and obviously a sounding board, it's resonance. Having an opposing view, just somebody else like that, that's, you know, highly, highly significant. Like, in what areas is there a gap? Is there a knowledge gap? In what areas is there a wisdom gap? This whole conversation is about the cultivating wisdom essentially through experience. And so with that rapid experience, in what area do I have a knowledge gap where I think I need outside help? Where outside help will be quicker than me trying to close this gap. Or by me having this gap, it really is actually allowing me to leak certain aspects like business mentor. If you're not in if you're not into business and you don't have a business mentor or someone that you can speak to about business, whether this is official or not official, it's going to be very, very difficult and very, very lonely. You know, it's potentially advisable that instead of employing that staff member to work for you, if you were lacking experience in a certain aspect of life, it would be better to invest that money in a mentor, because all you're going to be doing if you employ somebody and you've got a gap of knowledge and then you employ someone that also has that gap, is you then get into a situation where the blind is leading the blind. So this is why, like, I advocate therapy, I advocate anything around sounding board, external, getting out of your own head, you know. That's why I advise all of that stuff, excuse me, in the right circumstances. Obviously, I practice what I preach. Obviously, I'm a spiritual life coach. So obviously, I've seen what can happen in terms of you just reducing the time to a goal or some kind of transformation, because you were able to, through your experience, just share where you avoided the pitfalls. Do you know how much people I've helped just from sharing some information which allowed them to not go down a road which I know, because I've been there many times, can save them like a whole year of time, can save a whole 6 months of time. And then sometimes it's like, well, you got to let people fall on their sword. I feel, well, this is kind of a personal one, but for myself personally, even though there is a certain level of directness to it, because I don't really see negative, like I don't have negatives, not really in my dictionary, bad is not in my dictionary, falling on swords thing is not really the falling on sword. The falling on sword is, I'm just reading the chat. The falling on the sword is never really bad. Like I don't really, what's the word? What's a polite word? I value life, but because I understand that there is a continuation, trauma and badness is not necessarily a bad thing. I don't see that as a bad thing, because I understand the wisdom and the growth that can come from it. Essentially, that's just the words I'm trying to spit out. So with that, what we're looking to do is we're always just looking to tap into our wisdom, essentially. So we'll go on to the next point. Learning from other people's mistakes is what I should have said before the sentence. Working with other people allows you to learn from other people's mistakes in a much more tangible way. All right, that kind of wraps up like some of the things I've avoided. So yeah, we're about to finish off now because but I'm going to segue this into what's about to happen. So I'm going to end this by talking about what's going to be happening, but I'm not going to spend long doing it. But essentially, I've looked at my notes, and the thing I keep on avoiding as part of discernment is divination. And if anyone's careful, but it's come up at least 3 times on my notes that one of the things that you can choose to help you in your decision making is divination. But again, I literally skipped over that in my own notes that I had made because I wanted to make this conversation as grounded as possible, probably based more on the logic aspect of the brain. Yes, we're speaking about heart-centered spaces. Yes, we're speaking about intuition, but the overall theme of today's video and the takeaway from today's theme for me is more about heart brain coherence. That was crazy. Sorry. Just saw something on the chat. Yeah. Heart brain coherence. Heart brain coherence is where it's at. That's what this video is about. And for me, the divination stuff is crucial. It's extraordinary in my life, but that's because I operate from a place of no lack. Genuinely, I operate from a space of no lack. So in this space of no lack, I can fully trust my cards that I see in tarot. I can fully trust my pendulum that I use, you know, boom, fully, fully. This one's banging, by the way. But fully, I've never went against a decision on my pendulum, ever. And maybe I probably only use it in certain places. Again, this is when I want to walk on water. When I'm tapping into my walk on water aspect, this is what I use. But again, I don't always walk on water. One of the things that I could ask, one of the things that I probably don't really do it enough. I don't, almost I don't do it enough because I'm very particular when I use it, but I use this almost every day, really every day. And one of the things you can ask is my pendulum, is this pendulum good for this decision? Like, should I be making this decision with my pendulum? If you're about that pendulum life, it will tell you, you know, should I be using my tarot cards for this decision? Should I be using divination to make this decision? You know, for me, like I said, for me, like I'll just speak a little bit about like the divination stuff is so embedded into my life that, you know, I could call myself quote unquote advanced. And so I know how to use it, when to use it, the scenarios, how to read the signs. Like obviously I'm teaching all of this stuff. And I'm just teaching what I live. And obviously, you know, I'm just literally just teaching what I live. There is a certain danger. Like what the reason why I'm going with this whole grounding thing is because there's a certain danger that comes with tapping into your spirituality when this power is not wielded in the right way. And so that's why, you know, I'm being real adamant on like my focus on this video, which is yes, you can also use divination for discernment. But what skills is that really building? That's more building your courage to go with what you see. Like, can you actually just operate from it without any biases? Thank you. Can you operate with it without any biases? that would be a real key question. Real key question. So for me, we are going to be from now, almost every video that I'm gonna do, I'm gonna be adding divination aspects into it. I may not say it, but essentially I'm just taking the embedding of spirituality and merging the two worlds, the physical and the spiritual, the right and the left, the upper and the lower. They're becoming more blended. As I said, it's almost like an art imitating life and a life imitating art, paradoxically working at the same time. And it's gonna be it's just crucial that I just like I said, yeah, I'm just getting reminded of how important it is for us to be in ma'at, for us to be in balance, because yeah, we're about to go. We're about to go to some incredible places. Honestly, if you haven't subscribed, if you haven't liked, forget the liking even. Just subscribe to this channel if you are into these things: divination, synchronicity, universal laws, alchemy, meaning making, symbolism, numbers, words. Like I'm about to well, I've kind of started doing it already. I've done a couple of videos where I would say I've taken off the stabilizers. But we're really we're really about to go even deeper. Like we're about to turn it up like light speed. Um and so yeah, this video, like I said, is just real like yeah, just part of me being a responsible leader or a responsible teacher or a responsible YouTuber, whichever phrase I feel to use for the day. So yeah, I'm gonna cut the video off now. But if anyone wants to stay, so like I'm gonna drop this video off now. But if anyone wants to stay, I'll show. I'm just gonna show you a tool. I'll just show you some fun tools that I've been using because we've got quite a lot of people in the chat, and so I'm gonna warm people up for like what's to come. But the video will end for anyone that's just interested in discernment. So if you only came here for discernment, then now's the time to kind of leave. And then I'm just gonna show one or two tools that I've been building because yeah, so the fun happens.